Good evening, everyone. I'd ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Litzo,
Here.
Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Present.
Thank you. We'll go straight to our one public hearing tonight, which is a request for zoning amendment for recreational marijuana. Mr. Hessel, do you have any exhibits you wish to enter into the record?
I do, Mayor. Exhibit 1 is an affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the legal ledger. Exhibit 2 is an affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing also appeared in St. Louis County. Exhibit 3 is an affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the Webster Kirkwood Times. Exhibit 4 is a memorandum from Jonathan Race to the Planning and Zoning Commission recommending amendments to the zoning code to make the zoning code compliant with the new Amendment 3 concerning the legalization of recreational marijuana. And Exhibit 5 is a report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated December 22, in which they voted 8-0. Approval of a staff initiated zoning code text amendment related to recreational marijuana facilities. And Exhibit 6 is a code of ordinances of the city of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the City Council?
That would be Planning and Development Services Director Jonathan Race.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Mayor, Council, thank you. So as mentioned, this is a public hearing. David, do you mind pulling up my slides? For proposed text amendment related to adult use of marijuana. This was the impetus for this was, as you all know, Amendment 3 of the state constitution that passed in November. So we brought forth various changes to the zoning code to bring our zoning code, consistent with the state constitution as it's amended. So a summary of the changes, broad summary is that we will be updating section 25-104 to include revised and new terms and definitions to be consistent with the state constitution. I will point out, and it was mentioned, my memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission was entered as an exhibit for the public hearing in discussion actually today with the city attorney after a question from Councilmember Litzo regarding one of our definitions that forced the city attorney and myself to look even deeper into some of the terms in the changes in Amendment 3. And I will be providing an updated legislation in the next couple of weeks or before the next meeting to you all. So the memo that was provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission and passed by a vote of 8-0, the intention is still the same, that we will be changing the code to be consistent with Amendment 3, but just in full disclosure, we didn't realize the extent of how many definitions were tweaked in that amendment, both in the existing medical marijuana provisions as well as adding the new. To make it simple, we had thought that removing the word medical was going to make our definitions broad enough to cover everything, but the state actually continues to use definitions for medical marijuana facilities and adds new definitions and terms for non-medical or what they call comprehensive facilities. So I'll make sure I get you all those as soon as I can, those changes. But again, the intent and the reason for this public hearing is the same, that we are proposing to amend the zoning code to be consistent with the language in the state constitution. So we'll be amending those terms and definitions. We'll also be revising the use specific standards for those use terms in our code related to the marijuana, various marijuana uses. If you recall, there are different types of facilities: dispensary, cultivation, testing facility. So all those fall under the broader term of a marijuana facility. And then lastly, and this was part of the memo and part of the discussion of the Planning and Zoning Commission specifically, but one of the use specific standards in the current code with medical marijuana is that there's a required, the city elected to to utilize the fullest available 1,000-foot buffer in the, as allowed in the state constitution. You can elect to do less than that as a community, but the city council elected back in 2019 to take the full 1,000-foot buffer requirement from various facilities. At that time in 2019, we also elected to add public parks into the list of facilities that require a buffer. That was not language in the Constitution at that time and is not language in the Constitution now. And over the past few years, a couple of years, we've seen there, I guess there have been challenges to that, to communities that have added public parks in that. So after discussion with the city attorney, it was recommended to Planning and Zoning Commission, and is the recommendation to you all as well, to remove public parks from the list of facilities that requires a buffer. So that will be that is part of the proposal from staff on this as well. And lastly, there's a kind of erroneous reference in the current code about wrecking vehicles at a medical marijuana facility that is prohibited to do so. It's supposed to be in the next subsection U for major vehicle repair. So that was just a inadvertent change. There's so while we're cleaning this up or making revisions, we're also going to move that to the proper section. Let's see. So that's a summary. We're not proposing, I should have stated at the beginning that we're not proposing a change to the fact that we're treating these, they are currently treated, medical marijuana facilities are currently treated as special uses under our code. We're not proposing any change to that. We're not proposing any change to the 1,000-foot buffer requirement other than the aforementioned public park removal. And so they would continue to be, whether it's a medical marijuana facility or a, as it's now termed, comprehensive comprehensive marijuana facility, it would continue to require a special use permit. Also, as you all know, we do not currently have any of these facilities in the city. So that if one were proposed, whether it's medical or comprehensive marijuana facility, it would require a special use permit under the proposed language. So with that, I have the section of our code here as well, just as a reminder for what to be considered for zoning code text amendment. However, the biggest reason for this, as I mentioned at the outset, is to come into consistency with the now active state constitution. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Mayor, if I
John,
may,
I was
yeah,
just gonna ask
if I
you-
may supplement a little bit, I am the one that recommended that we delete parks from the current, because if you will recall, we put it in part because some other cities were doing it. We thought it was reasonable, even though it did not comply, for lack of a better term, within the constitutional amendment. It was challenged in a number of instances. And the courts have said that you have to narrowly tailor your ordinances to comply with the specific language of the constitutional amendment. So to avoid any confrontation, I recommended that we take that out. I would also say that, yes, it is still staff's recommendation that we would treat these as a special use permit. But I will remind you, as I did years ago, that if in fact a marijuana facility, particularly marijuana dispensary facility, is proposed, the city council will have very little, and it meets the 1,000-foot requirement. The city council will have very little discretion to deny the application. We keep it under the special use because you all may want, planning and zoning, you all may want to put some conditions on a particular application. So that certainly from a legal standpoint makes sense, but I don't want the city council to really believe that, unlike other special use permits, you can exercise some discretion and make a determination that it's not, that it may adversely affect the general character of the neighborhood and traffic congestion. That's not really a criteria for these kinds of facilities under the constitutional amendment. Don't blame the lawyers. This got voted in by the citizens. And I also add, as I mentioned in an email to Nancy, that keep in mind, we will also be presenting to the city council at the next meeting, along with the amendments to the zoning code, amendments to the offenses provisions, so that we make it abundantly clear from a law enforcement standpoint, what is and what is not allowed under the new constitutional amendment. People get confused about it, and I'll remind you at the next meeting as well, in that you're entitled to possess up to 3 ounces of marijuana. It does not mean that you get to use marijuana in any public place at all. Quite to the contrary, you cannot. So we're going to amend, and I should have added, you have to be over the age of 21. So we now have to amend all of those offenses provisions to deal with those kinds of aspects. So that will be coming to you as well.
John? Do we have questions from the council for Jonathan or John? Councilmember Litzer, you go first.
I was just wondering why.
Yeah, well, when I have more than one hand, we have a list I try to follow. So
Okay,
you're
I
the.
didn't see any other hands. I thought you couldn't
Oh, yeah.
remember my name. He did this. Questions. I was just, okay, so B3 and I1 is where it's allowed. So, and Jonathan, you said that like, we're gonna separate out dispensaries, production facilities, testing, whatever the heck.
We define them differently, just like the state code
I don't
does.
know that there would be like all of those things in one necessarily, maybe over an I1, I don't know, but I was just wondering, can we, I mean, you talk about not being able to control these things to a certain extent, but to me, a production facility might entail also like a major kind of typical smell that goes along with plant-based marijuana. So I'm just wondering,
Yeah, I mean, we
what's
did,
up with that? Does Amendment 3 to speak to that?
well, let me take a step back. So the current code, and I can't remember each of the subcategories, but we do, for instance, in B3, I believe it's only dispensaries that are eligible
Correct.
in B3. The production, testing, manufacturing, and dispensary are eligible in I1. So my understanding, as long as we're providing reasonable opportunity for all of these types of businesses to be in Kirkwood, is kind of the litmus test of if it's not unduly burdensome to allow these things to exist somewhere, then we can regulate those. So I think that answers, like, so the smell, odor, I mean,
I just want to make sure we can condition a production facility that they would have whatever kind of air scrubbers or something or other. I don't know. I mean, or is that an issue that I'm just like fabricating here?
yeah, I think, well, I'll let John weigh in as well, but I would think that as long as we do it in any way that we would do for another type of manufacturing facility, it could be a condition that could be discussed.
Right.
but-
These are the same questions that came with medical marijuana. That hasn't changed. So for industrial, let me back up. The constitutional amendment is abundantly clear that a city cannot prohibit any of these facilities. Cannot. You can regulate them up to 1,000 feet from a daycare, place of worship, in a school. I think that's all of them. You can also regulate them from when it comes to smell to a degree.
Okay.
But keep in mind now, under recreational, you can now, people will be able to grow marijuana in their home. Now inside, not outside. So the city has the ability, and that's why, again, that's why we're continuing to note that and keep them as a special use permit process. I'm just pointing out that, yes, you can impose conditions, but you really will be strained to say no. Unless there's some ancillary thing that they're doing that you find unacceptable.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Ward, you had your hand up?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, one, it's unlikely they're gonna incinerate any of their product in these facilities, one way or the other. But,
That was not included. in-
Nobody mentioned incineration.
a question, regarding the limits of our regulatory requirements. I've seen, articles in the paper and seen some on the news of break-ins and robberies of these facilities. Can we obligate them for certain levels of security on hand?
That's a great example of the kinds of conditions that you may want to impose if someone comes forward. Again, we don't have any yet. But for example, do they have to have security cameras, things of that nature, alarms? Yep.
And one other, so this is another political subdivision, but Merrimack is considering creating a facility for research and education on their campus. Would we have any, is this an appropriate place to try and address what they might do?
In the first instance, if in fact they're going to be engaging that activity, they have to get permission from the Department of Health and Senior Services. That's step one. To be able to apply for a license, they have to clear that hurdle. So I have no idea what Merrimack is intending to do, but whatever they're intending to do, like any other private citizen, if they want a manufacturing facility, meaning growing, manufacturing, or selling, dispensing, those are all, they have to go to the Department of Health and Senior Services to get their particular license. Now, the medical, as I understand, current medical marijuana facilities will be entitled to have a license for all or recreational, including recreational. New applicants have to go forward and then they have to be selected. And I have no idea what that process is, but be selected, determine that, yes, they can, and then you go to the community. Then before they're licensed, they have to get approval from the community as to a particular location, then back to Department of Health and Senior Services. That's a long way of saying, if Merrimack wants to do that and it's covered by the constitutional amendment, then yes, they would have to go to the Department of Health and Senior Services. I will admit to you, I don't know if marijuana is being part of a class and what they're involved in as far as studying it. No idea whether or not, because that's not the sale. So they may not in fact fall within those parameters.
Okay. I just wondered if it's something that, and I think they're in a very early conceptual place right now, but if it's something that this body might want to look at regulating in any way, it would be nice if we had that conversation early on with them.
This body would have a very difficult time trying to regulate a separate public governmental body, whether or not it's school district or community college district.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering.
Right.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Any other council members? Councilmember Sears.
So they will be able to wreck and salvage parts from vehicles, right? Since we're removing that.
Only if it's part of their marijuana sale business, I suppose, yeah.
And they won't remember it at all.
If I were an attorney handling this, I'd go through the legislative review process. They specifically remove that restriction.
But should I be putting that back into every use now? Is that, it's a.
Great type.
Council? All right, seeing none, nothing. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on this matter, David?
Mayor and council, there are no requests for comment.
Thank you. Well, with that, the public hearing is closed and we will have zoning code text amendment or amendments on
Easy for you to say.
February. What's our next meeting? February
February
2nd.
2nd.
Great. Thank you all. We'll go to public comments.
The public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the city council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the city council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the city council to the chief administrative officer or city clerk if action is needed.
Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
Mayor and council, we have no requests for comment.
David? We will move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I just have one quick
Good,
thing
so.
on the reappointment to the SPD. That's not a typo on Bud Pennington to June 2024. Okay.
no.
That's all.
All right, seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Motion passes. We'll go to new business. Yes, no unfinished business, so new business, Bill 10958.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance granting a special use permit for an animal facility, major with outdoor use at 10320 Manchester Road, Green Tree Center, subject to certain conditions.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Second.
All right, a motion is second. Any questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no, bill passes first reading. Go to resolution 5, 2023.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the bid of first student at the rates provided in the memo, a copy of which is attached here too and incorporated by reference herein, for bus transportation for the Recreation Department on an as-needed basis for an initial term of 12 months, with the option to renew for up to 4 additional 12-month terms, pending budgetary approval, and authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a contract.
Is there a motion for
Move
approval?
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 6, 2023.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution amending the contract with Luzco Technologies LLC by increasing the amount by $250,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $1,090,000 for the utility design and project management services for the electric department, and authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an amended contract.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Dewey Ward. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Resolution passes. No consent agenda items. City council reports. Anything to report? Comment on? Ask questions of? No, you're good. You don't think, you don't have to think of something.
We're required to ask.
Oh. All right. And on this side? All right. I see nothing. Then we'll go to Chief Administrative Officer report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I have an application for a liquor license to sell intoxicating liquor by the drink plus Sunday from Heater's Hot Chicken at 129 West Jefferson, and we would ask for approval by voice vote.
Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Anything else, Russ? or
No,
good?
that's all I
All
have,
right.
Mayor.
City Attorney report.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
All right, City Clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor, I have a couple things to report. First is the report of the January 18th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The following action was taken. The commission recommended approval of a special use permit and major site plan review for vehicle sales and rental at 10230 Manchester Road, Audi Kirkwood, by a vote of 8-0. The applicant proposes new building on the existing dealership site. A public hearing will be scheduled for that for February 16th, 2023. And just to report that my new deputy city clerk will be attending our next meeting because she starts on January 30th. So she'll be here on February 2nd, Bridget Waters. So
Very good.
Mhm.
have a full house here.
Well done.
Thanks, Laurie. Very good. Next meeting of the City Council will be February 2nd at 7 PM. This meeting is adjourned.